Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the workshop here at the Joe N. Eilert Junior Teacher Education Center. I ask that out of respect to everyone, please silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Also, if you have any material you wish to share with any board member, please give that to our executive assistant, Mrs. Morey. Board members will take a break every 2 hours. If you need one before that, please let me know. Would you now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence to honor all of those who lost their lives in 9/11. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Dr. Moore, the floor is yours. The purpose of the superintendent's workshop, and then we'll start with the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this meeting, as it always is, to present items that will initially or at some point come to the board for consideration and ultimately approval, as well as other topics as deemed appropriate. The first item I'd like to address, if it's okay with the board.
Mike, you need your mic. You need your mic. Yes.
The first item that I'd like to address, if it's okay with the board, is actually the follow-up item L, business from the business meeting that we had 2 weeks ago. As I know, it is pressing on everyone's mind. Just want to provide a update to the board quickly, and then provide the board the opportunity to have some dialogue regarding our future direction. So as you know, we had a number of books that were read during public comment at our last board meeting, and I want to provide an update regarding those books. And I'm going to break them down in two different categories. There were previously challenged books that were challenged, and I believe the conclusion of that was February of 2022. So an update on that specific list is 49 of those books were actually weeded prior to the board meeting on our last board meeting. 14 were removed and ultimately removed as of result of last week. And there are 68 that I have also put under review, and if there is sexual content, those books would ultimately be removed. And there is remaining 14 that do not involve a complaint regarding sexual content, so we'll deal with those if a review or a appeal for those books comes back up. And then number 3 that were ultimately removed by the individual who submitted the initial petition. There are also books that were yet to be challenged, and I met with the individual who submitted these books, and we agreed that we would consider these books challenged moving forward. And of those books, 4 had already been reviewed, 10 had already been weeded. There were 21 that were read at the meeting, the last business meeting. They have been removed. Those books have been reviewed for sexual content and have ultimately been removed, and then there's 60 that we're looking into for sexual content, and then we'll ultimately remove if there is in fact sexual content. So what this does, in essence, brings us to a space where if we were aware of a book that had sexual content in it, whether it was from a previous challenge or a recently new submitted challenge, the district has either removed or in the process of reviewing to identify, does it go to the committee, or what are the next steps in terms of removing that particular book. That puts us in a good place in terms of adhering to what is state law and making sure over the 100,000 books that we have, they all are aligned and in place with state law. That is a humongous lift to do, but ultimately we are charged to do it, and we are moving very aggressively to ensure that that is exactly where we are. But what that doesn't do is remove the opportunity for anyone in our community to come and speak to our board and have the opportunity to read content within our books. That is in statute, it is clear, it is the opportunity for them to come and do that. So as a result of that, board has asked me to look at a number of things that we could do in order to ensure we don't, without question, remove anyone's First Amendment rights to read from books, but at the same time, take every appropriate step to be proactive, to work with our community, to make sure we're listening, responding as quickly and as effectively as we can. So one of the things, as I reviewed with staff for last meeting, is that we need to do a better job of adhering to room capacity. This room has a very high capacity based on its square footage, but when you add furniture and the design of the room, that space ultimately changes. So meeting with our Director of Compliance for that specific area, we will adhere to the appropriate level of individuals within this room. We need to ensure that our egress spaces are clear, so given a situation, we could exit the building and not be in a situation in which we're over-complying or allowing too many individuals in the room. I have been asked that we will take those steps and have that in place. We've already met with our Sheriff's Office in order to make sure that we have a system in place for that upcoming meeting. So we will ensure that we are in compliance with room capacity based on the design of the furniture within the room, and we will make sure that our egress areas are all clear, and individuals, God forbid, who need to exit the space can ultimately exit the space. I've been asked to look at different opportunities around public comment, maybe moving public comment at the end of the meeting. That is not something I'm recommending at this time. It would require board action, so ultimately it is a decision for the board, but I think we could handle our business in a way that ensures we don't have to move public comment to the end of the meeting, although it is an option for the board to consider. Also was asked to consider not broadcasting public comment. That is an opportunity that we could do, not something I'm recommending. I think we need to uphold individuals' First Amendment rights, and we need to put systems in place so we can work with our community to address any issues or concerns that they may have. And I wouldn't want myself, this board, or anyone to perceive that our desire is to remove individuals from having the opportunity not to speak. We will look at, and Ms. Berenborg charged me immediately following the last meeting, and she added an item for citizen input. And I think there are some steps that we can take around the citizen input form so we can ensure that we are better informed to respond accordingly. Very similar to what the county does, we can add the address to the form. Now, if they don't fill it out, it does not preclude them from having the opportunity to speak. I can add a topic to the form. If they don't fill it out, it doesn't preclude them from speaking. We can make sure they have an opportunity to understand on the form. If they're there to challenge a book, I can have staff available to initiate that challenge. What does that do? It allows us to immediately respond to the concern the community member has or the parent has to initiate that challenge, which would ultimately remove the book until it had been reviewed. Now, the individual can say, you know what? No, thank you. I know it's available to me, but I'm not going to initiate the challenge. I'm still going to read the context of the material during the public meeting. But these are proactive things that we could do in order to make sure we're doing everything possible. Because at the end of the day, this board wants to, A, hear from its community. And you all have made that extremely clear. You want to be able to hear from your community. While at the same time, we want to get to the business of the board. So these are some things that I could do. What the assurances that I can give the board is, A, we have been extremely proactive in looking at books that need to be reviewed. We've identified every book that we know of regarding sexual content. But does that mean of the 100,000 books that we have, a member of our community or a parent can come and want to read the challenge? That's a tall order. It is our desire, it is our intent, that's where we are working towards. I think we've done a significant amount of work to be the district that is leading the way in this particular area. So with that, that is an update, Madam Chair. I'll be happy to answer any questions board members may have.
Okay, board members, any questions? Ms. Berenborg? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you kind of including my item with this because I did notice, some people that want to read the books, they want us to be aware, so we'll remove the books. I'm totally okay with that. I understand. Not a problem. But I also don't want people to be attacked who were reading the book and causing more controversy. So I think it would be appropriate and professional for people to be able to come to the podium and be able to say, hey, here's the book I want to challenge. Here's the reason why I want to challenge it. And then they have the opportunity to say, I'm doing an official challenge. Do you want me to read it, or do you want me to give it to you to challenge? As long as we're within the law. The other thing is, I think we need to look at our form, because the law clearly says parent reading it. And of course, we didn't have some of the people that were reading weren't parents. I get that community members are upset. I get that. And we need to get books off the shelves that, are causing all this problem. But I think that let's do it without causing kind of the sideshow that we had, and keeping it safe in the room for everybody involved. And I think the best way to do that is to make sure that our forum has the opportunity for people to put, I am a parent of a child that attends our public schools. And I think that's within the law, and that the speaker or the chair needs to know who is speaking at the podium.
Thank you. Ms. Rosario?
My concerns are censorship. And so what it sounds like to me is that you are trying to put parameters around who speaks, when, where, how, why, or providing their address, which is completely unnecessary, to provide citizen comment. Citizens have a First Amendment right, any citizen, doesn't matter whether they are a resident or not. They have every right to speak during citizen comment, just like they have every right to their First Amendment to speak to us even via email. And so providing or giving parents an option to put on their form whether they are a parent in the community might be maybe out of courtesy, but it doesn't make a big difference. We're still going to hear citizen comments. If a parent, I want to talk a little bit, and I'm going to hand this over to the attorney as well. Just because one statement in the current revised HB 1069 states that a parent has the right to read a passage does not preclude all citizens having a right to speak during citizen comment. It does not remove any citizen coming up to the podium during citizen comment and reading any book or any passage that they want. In fact, they could read from, I don't know, whatever they want to read from. They can read from the Bible even if they wanted to. It doesn't really matter. It's their right to say whatever they want. If they want to get up and recite, Mickey Mouse's chant, they can do that, because we've heard ridiculous comments, and no one has censored the most ridiculous comments that we have heard prior. But now we have an issue of what happened, and obviously now apparently we want to try to find a way to censor citizens, and I have issue with that. I have issue with the way that the room is seated. Cabinet members take up a whole lot of space in the front. You don't need that much space for the cabinet, to be in the front. You can move a little closer and put seats behind the cabinet members to allow more seating for people. I have talked about that before. I've also mentioned, even when you have people in the hallway, in the lobby, there are no seats provided for them. I asked Mr. Seymour, there was an older lady here who was limping in. I don't remember if she had a cane, but she was leaning up against the wall because there weren't any seats available for her. If she was in the overflow, she wouldn't have a seat there either. And how would we be able to accommodate her? So if we're going to have room in an overflow, I'm totally okay with the overflow, because sometimes we have a lot of citizens coming in, but we need to provide seating for them too, or at least allow for people to bring their own chairs. I'm okay with that. So I'm going to hand it over to the attorney with regard to citizen comment and censorship, and that one line again in 1069. Yeah, it does say that a parent can read a passage, but the purpose of putting that in statute wasn't, again, to preclude anyone else from reading. It was to state that at a board meeting, essentially, if you keep reading, the second part of that says that if that parent is shut down, then the book is immediately removed. So the purpose wasn't to just say only parents. The real purpose was about shutting down the person at a public meeting so that the book can be immediately removed. That was essentially the ultimate purpose there. Sir?
I actually think that everybody is right. In large part, you know, and Ms. Rosario and I spoke at length on Saturday morning, and I spoke with staff a couple of times and reviewed, as one might expect, the very thorough listserv postings among school board attorneys concerning the amendments to 1006-28. And candidly, we are where lawyers want to be on one hand and not on the other, which is cases of first impression. But there are interpretations that are all the way from reading at the public hearing without an objection is inconsistent with the objection process to the most public-friendly is that it wouldn't have been put in there if it were not meant to create a change. And as I expressed previously with staff, several members of the legislature, including Speaker of the House Renner, were troubled by inconsistencies and murkiness with the statute. And Mr. Renner, at least, is the only member of the legislature whom I know actually expressed certain concerns individually, and that was why we have the subsection 2 edition. Remember before we didn't have the sub paragraphs to add sexual conduct. And I think what the superintendent is proposing with actually allowing the forms to be filled out at the hearing seems to square the circle as well as anything can, because it does create a paper trail and allow the process to occur. And when you look at the statute does actually refer to reading passages from any material that's subject to an objection. You know, I think by filling out the form, you are creating an objection that meets the paper trail requirements. What Board Member Rosario and the superintendent both seem to be saying is you're right, that the Parent Bill of Rights is adopted here or implemented here specifically gives the parent the right to read passages due to conduct or content that the parent objects to. There is one parent-specific right, and I think both of you were saying this, that if the chair gavels that person stopped, and it's for a subsection 1 violation, that it's pornographic, or that it's obscene, that right there, that the parent stops, period. One question that was asked was, you know, I think we were trying to deal with it actually at the last business meeting, is does that mean that the other board members sit by? No, you can have a point of information saying, I would like to discuss. If you believe it to be out of order, you can say point of order. I mean, however you want to do it. at least raise the issue. But ultimately, on that point, procedurally, it seems to be that most people agree it's the chair who has that right. And ultimately, other than that, generally, the interpretation for First Amendment proceedings in front of any Florida board is, as a general principle, if you are on public comment, as long as the speaker does not impose a threat or anything that is really out of order, there is a fair amount of latitude for that speaker as long as it is at public comment. I think that while the parent or member of the public has the right to make the objection, any speaker there can speak to any book. The subsection that says if the district school board finds that the material meets the requirements under subparagraph A, or that any other material contains prohibited conduct under subparagraph B1, the school district shall continue use of the material. That's the question that we were raising at the motion, that, I think it is a reasonable interpretation until a court tells us otherwise, that the school board can vote as a majority to remove under B1 or to address anything under 2, 3, or 4. So I hope that generally answers, and again, understand we are in a brave new world, and I know we recognize that the BOE and DOE have given guidance, but at this point, all I know is I think doing it this way best protects the process and best protects First Amendment until a court says otherwise, or at least the Attorney General says otherwise.
Hey,
Can I follow
all right,
up?
yeah, real quick, and then I'll go to Dr. Posca.
So thank you for that information, because that is extremely helpful. I just want to add also the line in that statute, if we're going to split hairs or play semantics on this, it states a parent. It doesn't say a parent in the district. So technically, anyone in the county could be a parent. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone that, and here's where I think we're going to really murky the waters even more, is who gets to determine if you are a parent or not. I don't know if anyone's going to actually stand up to a parent. I don't want anyone to be put in that situation and say, are you a parent, yes or no? I think that's really wrong. And if we're going to go to the lengths of censorship, then send someone to do that. I wouldn't want to be that person to do that. So any grandparent is a parent, any grandma, grandpa, any aunt or uncle might be a parent, any cousin might be a parent, any step-parent might be a parent, anyone who has had a miscarriage is a parent. I mean, the list can go on, and I think, again, why would we even want to walk into, a web of confusion in that area? I just think it's very simple, very understandable. A parent and or citizen can't, and we know this because we already have it in our policy, and it's in another statute that says that a parent or citizen can object to any material. We know that already. So giving them the latitude to come up on their own and speak to whatever item they want to should not change. I'd also like to just add that we already have a form. We have a citizen form. I don't know if you have seen it in the district. I don't know if we can actually, somebody can mail him the form or email him the form, but we have a form that citizens fill out. And it has their name on it, it has the meeting date, it has their phone number, it has their email on there, and it actually indicates exactly where they're going to speak, if they're going to speak to citizen comment, or if they're going to speak to a specific action agenda. And there is a line where someone can actually add in their action agenda item is, and there is a line where they can actually write their, the indication, indicate whatever they're going to speak to. So we already have that. It just seems like every time there is a controversial issue, board members just want to say, well, let's just cut down citizen comment, or let's find another way to limit or censor or put them to the end of the meeting or take them off of the camera. I think that's wrong. That's wrong. We have to stop being reactionary. It is what it is. This is the nature of our business. And when this controversy kind of dies down and ends, we will be faced with another one sometime or another. And we can't keep being reactionary. We have a process in place. If we're going to change anything within our current citizen comment process, I would say stick with the language that's in our policy. And what we're not doing in our policy is adhering to what it states. Our policy states, and the form states, that a citizen has to speak to an item that is on the agenda, printed on the agenda. When they walk in and they pull a paper, based on what is the printed agenda, that is the item that they should speak to. Now, it's like a free-for-all. Anybody can put anything here and say, well, I'm going to speak to any action item, even if you add something later on. That's something that I wouldn't appreciate. That's something that needs to stop. If you want to censor anything, censor that.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
May I, in a vacuum, parents is parents. I would suggest that because these are responsive to the Parents' Bill of Rights, I think it means parent of a child in the system. That said, I think the only real distinction here is that that would give the chair the right to gavel down, and therefore, if it meets the circumstances under subparagraph 1, remove the book immediately. But I think that's the only distinction, Board Member Osorio. I think that the First Amendment right is a right to have notice and an opportunity to be heard, and the rest of the subsection gives the board the opportunity to do, and here I'm going to get lawyer wonky. I'm sorry, you invited the vampire across the threshold. But it's
I welcome it. We need it. It's about time we get it. Get what you're gonna give us.
It's what Dr. Posca and I were discussing at the last meeting. It's that 3 of you had raised objections at the time, and Dr. Posca said, well, isn't that enough? And my response was, no, you have 3 members of the board. The board speaks through the board's vote. And so really, that gavel is an exception to an almost universal rule. And the almost universal rule is, if you all have 3 votes, or should it be, as I understand it, a majority of a quorum if you have 2 out of 3, then the book at that point gets removed if it meets the other criteria. So I think it is and again, a judge may ultimately say otherwise. And again, I think that looking straight at the statute, yours is not an unreasonable interpretation. But I think because it was created as another iteration of the Parents' Bill of Rights for parents with kids in the system, given that the right of the one gavel is an exception to the general rule where a majority rules, this really, I think, gives them the opportunity, as the superintendent said, if they fill it out, they fill it out. If they don't fill it out, we can't bar them from speaking. That's a flat First Amendment right, as long as they're not out of turn. And quite frankly, the other night was robust First Amendment. That's how hearings go in large part. But bottom line is, I think the only distinction is that one provision gives parents the one right for one member. And quite frankly, when you think about it, and I will shut up after this, the fact that you are otherwise operating as a board, I would think, we would want to have the majority rule as much as possible, and that this be a very narrow exception to parents, but consistent very much with the Parents' Bill of Rights.
Okay, and we'll go to Dr. Posca now, then back to Ms. Berenborg, and then to myself.
So I guess, is this thing on? Since the last meeting, I guess some of the board members have tasked the superintendent with looking at how we do our public comments and seeing how we can limit that. Some of the things that were discussed are looking at the room capacity, changing the time of public comment to the end of the meeting, not broadcasting the public comment, citizen input form changes including address and topic, or limiting who can speak potentially to parents with kids in our schools. You know, in my opinion, I see this as kind of a knee-jerk response to what happened, and it's the kind of thing people with a fascist ideology would support. I don't support limiting free speech in our public hearings, and if you go back under COVID, they tried to do basically all these things during COVID as well. So this is not the first time this board has tried this. Additionally, one board member's comment that the last meeting, referring to it as a sideshow, you know, that was a self-inflicted sideshow by the board. That was entirely the board's fault. All those books were challenged in the past, and it could have been taken care of if it had been handled properly. So that was a self-inflicted sideshow.
Thank you, Dr. Posca. Ms. Berenborg?
Sure. First of all, I'm not asking to censor anybody. That's not what I asked for. What I asked for was just to sort of the board chair to know who's speaking at the podium. You know, we have been all voted in by constituents that vote in our county, not from North Carolina, not from outside of our district. And I think it's important for us to know who's at the podium speaking to us. That's one thing. Another thing, the law does say parent. And so I think it's appropriate that the board chair knows if it's a parent of a child. Because let's face it, is this really about removing a book that's harmful to children, or is it about somebody getting to speak on camera and getting it to go viral? You know, I think I'm all for let's remove the books that kids don't need in front of them. And Dr. Posca, you don't know what the law was in place before and how we were instructed by our attorney to carefully go and navigate the law carefully. You know, there are all kinds of groups that are attacking this from both sides, and we're in the middle of this. And you weren't on the board when all that was going on, so you don't know. You don't. But I'm going to tell you, from my perspective, I want to remove the books, but I want to follow the law, and the current law is in place, and it has changed, and I'm fine with that. Let's do it. But let's do it appropriately, professionally, and let's not look like the sideshow that happened last time. Because this is a school board, and it's a school board meeting. It is not a circus. And I think if people want to come and complain about something, that's fine. But let's not make this into this huge viral moment when we could really be about kids, about learning, about books that need to be removed. And I'm all for removing them. I just want to make it done professionally with courtesy. And I think it's important for us to follow the law. And what the law says is that we need to know if it's a parent or not speaking. And I'm not saying that we can't vote against somebody else speaking about a book. That's fine. But I know the reason why I bring it up is because there was somebody that was handed one of the papers that was told to read it into the mic. And they said later that they felt bad about that later. They did not want the book, and that's why they did it. And I understand that, totally understand that. But afterwards, they felt very afraid because they were being attacked for reading it into a camera and then broadcasting it like it is. And I feel for those people because their goal is to remove the book. It is not to be attacked by somebody. And unfortunately, that happened on all sides, the attacking, and that's got to stop. And the only way it can stop is if we knee-jerk reaction and react to it and get it to stop. And it's on us to get it to stop. So I'm all for doing and following the law and making sure that we have things in place, but I'm not for censoring. I don't think we should do that, but I also think that it's important to make sure that whoever's speaking at the podium, we know who they are and what they're speaking about, what they're speaking to. And I'll agree with Mrs. Rosario on the fact that it's gotten out of control and we need to get control of it. That's why I asked the superintendent to please look at the forms today.
Okay, just a few words from the chair. The one thing I've been talking about for 3 years is that we keep the business of the board as our primary responsibility. I believe citizen input is very, very important. Many times when people speak on action items, it really makes me think about my vote. It really does. And when we're doing the business of the board, what we're doing then for the superintendent and his staff and our principals and teachers is helping them and giving them every tool we can give them to make sure that our students are successful. Hope you notice, as a chair, I did not deny anyone his or her First Amendment rights. And it is a law, a parent can speak. It does not define the parent, so there's really no, it'd be nice to know if they were a parent in the district, but you cannot stop someone from doing that if they are a parent. If they're a parent from Martin County or whatever. When the books were shut down, I too talked with our attorney. It should be point of information. And what I will do now as a chair is make sure when the point of information is brought forward and what the point of information is, that we will take a board vote. I think it's important that it comes for the entire board. And I think most board members from the last meeting saw that those books were removed. As far as what Dr. Moore talked about with the room and numbers in here and so forth, I do think it's important that not just board members, but people feeling comfortable coming here, feeling comfortable to speak. I know that Dr. Shafty and Ms. Basura have been meeting with people throughout the year as far as the books, and they have done a very good job with that. If the form talks about a book being challenged, Dr. Moore, if it's challenged, it immediately comes off the shelf, correct?
Through the chair, within 5 days, yes.
Okay, all right. So if you have a concern, even with checking out that you want to challenge it, it's going to come out the shelf. And we've all heard the information, in fact, it was sent to us last December about number of books being checked out at the middle and high school, August through December of last year. Average of 7% in the middle schools and about 1.3% in the high schools. The bigger picture for me is, are our students reading for enjoyment? And I know they check out the iPads and laptops, they read from their phones and so forth, but as we are re-envisioning our libraries that a lot of people are very excited about, maybe we'll get our kids back to the library and reading for enjoyment, although I know a lot of them read differently. I want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable coming to a board meeting and speaking. I believe that when we all talk about it, we could always have that general coming together as to why we are here for our students to make sure that we give the superintendent the support. A little disappointed that we don't do this, and I find myself at fault for this too, Dr. Moore, but I'm doing better on this when I go out to the community, and I go out quite a bit. We are a really good public school district. We have shown that on our website about our rankings and where we are. I'm very excited about getting the information about our school grades, because I'm telling you, if you go to our schools, I've got 3 scheduled this week. If you go to our schools and go into those classrooms, you will see that work is being done. You will see the principals, you will see the teachers, the support staff, work is being done. So I always want to keep that focus. And just in recap for me, if a parent or anyone could challenge a book and give it to the superintendent and not read it, that would be absolutely wonderful, because we don't want any of our kids doing that. I believe in the information that we had from Dr. Moore, 14 of those books have been challenged before. Is that correct? I want to say it right. Of the ones of that night.
Through the chair, there 14 of them were under the initial challenge.
Initial
Yes.
challenge, I'm sorry, you're right, the initial challenge that we received 2 years ago. The law has changed, I understand that also. But we had some after effects of that law. And all I'll say on that is it's been pretty tough. So I just, as a board chair, point of information's read. If someone wants to read that, we'll do a board vote, and we'll keep going from there. I encourage parents to, if they want to talk about something, give that information to Dr. Bohr, whoever you decide to do that, and that we continue to move forward with what we're here as a school district. But I appreciate everyone's input on that. Ms. Rosario.
Thank you. The law has not changed. To define what is age-appropriate or to define what is not age-appropriate and have those removed, the definition of obscenity has not changed. Neither has the legal requirement in 1006.28 that says that our schools should be free of pornography and anything prohibited in 847. That has not changed. That is still the same today as it was in 2022, as it was in 2021 when I made my first charge to the board, to the superintendent, as it was years prior. That has not changed. The law on what is prohibited, what is obscene, and what is pornography has not changed. So for us to say that the law has changed, it has not in that particular, in that area. What has changed in the new law is how parents can object. The other thing that has changed is how boards can take action, immediate action, for those books that are inappropriate, pornographic, sexual, and has sexual content. But the actual understanding of what is prohibited, what is obscene, and what does not belong in our schools, what is not standards-based, those laws never changed. So our state legislatures only said, they only put emphasis on the things that were already in place in law. And they've allowed a way for parents to object that it won't take years before a book gets removed from the libraries. So that really needs to be clear. I've heard that at least 4 times this week. That is not accurate. Again, what has changed is the way that a parent can object and the way that a district and a board can function to have those books immediately removed. Mrs. Berenborg said something that I want to address. She said she thinks that we should know who is speaking. Again, we already know who is speaking because the speakers put their name and their contact information on the current speaker's form. I heard, I think it was Dr. Jones who said, or somebody else who said something about knowing the topic. We know what the topic is because it's already on the speaker's form as to what their topic will be. If you ask someone to specify even more what their topic will be during citizen comment, not during action, then that's censorship, and we shouldn't go there. The other thing is, somebody said, I think it was Mrs. Berenborg who said, I'm all for removing the books, but I take issue with that because they're the same books that she voted on in 2022 to keep in our schools. And it's wrong. It's wrong. And I appreciate Dr. Posca who said, I think you said it earlier somehow, it's a derelict of the district, of the board, to not take action, firm action to make sure that these books that are not age appropriate, that are not content based, you know, strictly to the standards that we are responsible for, that the superintendent takes and he signed on the dotted line when we hired him to say that he was going to honor the standards in our school district. And nowhere does it say that those books are part of our standards. And we all took an oath So we have to make sure that we finally do the right thing and not start changing things just because you didn't like the way a board meeting went. Moving forward, if we remove all these books and these books don't exist, then we wouldn't have an issue. We won't have any worry that a parent will come up, or won't, to a school board meeting and read a book. Because we have every confidence that they're going to be removed, if not already removed, from our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Rosario.
I'd like to add one more thing.
Sorry, yes, Dr. Hoskin.
Yeah. One other thing that came up during the prior board meeting was a discussion about the last time these books had been attempted to be read. And the board and the board attorney determined that these books, the same books that were read at the prior board meeting, could not be read. So we suppressed their First Amendment right to freedom of speech under the reasonable grounds that they're reading pornography on the TV, and in some cases, child pornography. There was a reasonable standard. However, in this board meeting, we decided to allow them as a board to read it, the same exact material that they were told previously they could not because it was illegal. And the stated reason for that was because if we did stop you, we'd have to take the books out. So, you know, I was very surprised that when I discussed this, I ended up getting an ethics complaint from Christina Jacobs, or whoever was in charge of ethics complaints. Maybe I'm getting the wrong name. Somebody sent me an ethics complaint. And I guess my question would be, you know, if me discussing somebody breaking the law is unethical, did you review that speech for the fact that the law was being broken? And that's what I was discussing. So apparently it's unethical for me as a board member to discuss laws being broken, but it's not unethical for the board to break them.
Thank you, Dr. Posca.
Sorry, Christina
Sorry.
Jacobs, not you. I thought I saw your name at the bottom. My bad.
No,
It was
it's
a-
not my name. Just a moment, please.
It
Go
was
ahead.
a resident
Just a moment,
citizen,
please.
Okay.
a citizen in the community.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Sid, sorry.
And through the chair to Dr. Posca, the question was FCC regulation, which is murky in many ways, and as you probably know, has been the topic of a lot of consideration in the modern world by the U.S. Supreme Court. But I represent currently, and have represented previously, small colleges with FCC regulation. As a general principle, your question the other night was, are we reaching the point of FCC regulation? Remember, that was my first meeting, so I didn't know where you all were broadcasting. So I'm going to take this in a couple of steps. First, as a general principle, it's my understanding that you do YouTube and public access TV. And so public access TV is not directly regulated by FCC. That is something that the licensee is allowed to provide to public agencies, and there was a prior FCC regulation that would have regulated the content of public access TV, and that was struck down. The only issue remaining would be if there were content that meets the definition of obscene, the licensee can ask for that to be removed, but it's not a direct FCC issue. Beyond that, if it were regulated by the FCC, there are a couple of cases, Pacifica and Playboy, that are interpreted together by the FCC to say, if you have content just because it has bad language or sexual language, that does not by itself render something subject to FCC enforcement. it would also have to be shown in a fact-specific basis that you intend it to be for titillation or for something of that nature, shock value. And what this board is doing is complying with what the Florida legislature has directed it to do. And so it is my opinion that it's almost certainly not directly regulated. And even if it is, it's highly unlikely under the facts that we are compelled to follow, the delegation by the legislature, that it would be prohibited by the FCC. So I hope that answers now that I have a better understanding of how you all broadcast.
All right, thank you, sir.
Mayor?
Yes, Dr. Moore, did you want to say something now or before?
Yes, and I just wanted to let the board know there's still additional policy work that has to be done. There were changes to 1069 that were in place prior to this year that allows the board allows me to make recommendations to the board to remove these ultimate books. I don't know if the attorney wants to discuss those changes, or you want to wait until we bring those changes in policy. I know Ms. Rosario sent me information last Wednesday that kind of highlights some of those changes to embed them into policy that will be coming to this board and as quickly as I can get them to you.
Madam
Yes, Ms. Rosario.
I don't mind, if you want to take a different direction, but I wanted to speak specifically to the FCC, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So I did some research, right, and I came up with, I don't know how I found this, the Children's Internet Protection Act, CIPA. And it's striking, the language that's in this, obviously, and it's from the FCC. And the Children's Internet Protection Act was enacted by Congress in 2000 to address concerns about children's access to obscene or harmful content over the internet. CIPA imposes certain requirements on schools or libraries that receive discounts for internet access or internal connections through the E-rate program. And it was, Mr. Bass already confirmed that we do indeed are the or participate in the E-rate program. So we're subject to this, SIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act. I guess that's the bottom line. But the interesting language here is that what it requires is that schools and libraries subject to SIPA, or rather the protection measures, must block or filter internet access to pictures that are A, obscene, which is what you mentioned just a moment ago, child pornography, or harmful to minors for computers that are accessed by minors. And there's some other language in here that still talks about schools and libraries. So it seems like the purpose is specific to internet access, but as it refers to schools and libraries, not everything is on the internet. So how do we transpose this to a board meeting? I suppose we don't, because there's nothing in here that talks about publicly, I guess putting anything out there that violates these requirements. Maybe I'm wrong.
No.
What is your?
And again, I will say, I'm starting to feel like a romper room teacher in the sense of everybody's right. You are right, Board Member Rosario, in the sense that the act you're talking about is one of several FCC acts that a school district, one of my clients we just were reviewing for compliance for third-party vendors. I mean, that is, but that is, again, the difference. The U.S. Supreme Court will treat, as I'm sure you all have gone through, graduations in one regard, a public meeting in another regard, and the core issue, and Dr. Jones was trying to, I think, follow that line at the meeting with the content warning, is what is reasonably expected to be reviewed by or exposed to a minor. And I agree that from the internet standpoint, those are very strict, and I've not been asked to look at any of your vendor agreements, but I know that is a federal and state requirement as well, as far as that goes. But certainly the FCC, and I pulled up the PEG publication just to make sure on the government access this morning, and that's pretty black and white. It's not directly regulated. Certainly the internet is, and if it's internet use at a library that is a school library, it is. If it is a third-party vendor that we're using, it is. Those are very strict. And certainly the language that you have indicated regarding subsection 1 and B, obscenity or pornography, that would apply to any of the books in the library. And just to get back on 2 points that Dr. Moore said, and also you and I in our very robust and helpful conversation the other day, and you asked some very pointed questions. Dr. Moore mentioned that you all are looking at amending the policies. You have proposed 2 policies. As the rulemaking process requires, you all, I don't think, fall under this. I think executive branch agencies generally look at October 1 as being when you have to say if you've not adopted anything since July 1. It's my understanding staff is at this point already looking at doing the policy amendments. What you would do, and forgive me, I'm sure this is old news for all of you, but just the recitation, you do a notice of rule development. What is a notice of rule development? Under 12054 and 12081 for a school district, it's publishing in the paper. We are going to be putting this to workshop. And then at workshop, you develop what the policy is, and then, of course, have the 28-day notice minimum for final publication of the rules. So the whole point being that the implementation is required. 1006-28 does expressly require the policy. You have the policy with the amendments in language. Those amendments in language with the process need to be incorporated. I will note that Board Member Rosario has taken a significant first cut. I've looked at it. There's language changes around the edges, but it's 90 to 95% just straight out of the statute. And I know that Dr. Moore and his staff are looking at it, but I certainly know we've had significant internal discussions already about getting that process.
Thank you for that. Just so board members know what's being addressed.
Talking about.
Yeah, so what's being addressed is I sent Dr. Moore last week two policies with the suggested changes according to House Bill 1069 for policy 2522 and 2520. 2522 is the objections policy that we currently have, and literally it just took from House Bill, you know what? Here, I have an extra copy.
You have another
that's
one
right.
for yourself?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
mine on my computer. I sent it to Dr. Moore. 2520 is the selection of instructional materials, and then 2522 is our objections policy. You don't get to see on your copy, I apologize because it's in black and white, But what I sent to Dr. Moore, and of course he can forward it to you, is, the green, the added language in green. That's what I sent to Dr. Moore. And literally, I just did a crosswalk between House Bill 1069 and our current policies. So that's what I presented to him last week, and that's what he and the attorney are referring to. So you all know what's coming forward. I wanted it to be on the agenda today, but apparently it didn't reach the 7-day window, so it didn't get on the agenda. But it is incredibly important for us to kind of look at that. They're going to come to us anyway. It's going to come time where we're going to need to adopt it. We should have adopted this before. What I realized, because this law actually is supposed to be in place as of July 1st, and we don't have anything that actually captures the new law in our policy. So it would be something that I would ask for the board's approval for, and of course with your input, but you'll see those changes there. I did some digging a little bit into the Administrative Act, and I had some questions on it. I know that we do have a policy that states that we will adopt our policies according to the Administrative Act. So I pulled that up. It just says that. It just says Administrative Act. But when I look at this, it seems very, like you said, executive, kind of higher up government. Only in those other places that seem to indicate the agency. So I'm assuming, the local agency. And it's very detailed in terms of, publicly posting, which we do not do, we have not done, where we change a policy and then we publicly post it in the newspaper, and then wait for, and give, citizens, that we do, we give citizens an opportunity to comment, and then there has to be a workshop and so on and so forth. So we have done things a little bit all over the place. But I appreciate that he brought up this administrative rule-making policy, because it will keep us in line. I think it'll be a fair process for everyone to follow. Once that's ironed out, so that we can figure out, where we fall within all these pages. There's tons of pages here that some things don't seem to apply to us at this local level. But otherwise, I am certainly open to it, and I appreciate the feedback. And I don't know if this is an inappropriate time, but is Mr. Ansbacher
Yes, ma'am.
going
Yes,
to
ma'am.
stay with us?
Pardon?
Are you going to stay and remain our attorney?
At this point, as I mentioned to you, that's what Terry Harmon and Molly and I are discussing, is what our respective roles are. But certainly at this point, at least at the hearings, I appear to be the board counsel. And Madam Chair, may I respond? I know we're going off in a direction, but I want to try to,
Real quick.
tie it up. Under 12054 and 12081, which is the educational unit section, you all have the option to post in the newspaper or do it online. You all have chosen to do it in the newspaper. And I think that, again, the workshop where you all will discuss it is in the nature, if it's in the APA, as opposed to a normal workshop. If the public wants to make comment, the public can make comments at an APA workshop. Other than that, everything is pretty much in line with what you all are doing now.
Okay, we'll wrap that up. And just seeing this for the first time, obviously, we talked about bringing policies to the board. So we'll look at this, put it on the next agenda, then we get our feedback. But I'll have to look at that in detail. All righty, Dr. Moore.
Just through the chair, yes, we'll bring this back for workshop. You've clearly defined we'll take this policy, bring it back for the board to provide feedback, then we'll take it to, and send it to public hearing, and then 28 days later, the board will approve it. So that is the process that captures everything that we're legally required to do. I'll have the opportunity in the coming up week to circle back with each board member regarding legal counsel and our direction moving forward. Thank you.
All right, go ahead with,
Oh, that's
Oslo
right.
Middle.
Can we solidify what was originally suggested with regard to the citizen plan comment and all that? Because I didn't hear consensus on any of your recommendations.
Through the chair, my recommendations was to provide a response to the board. Under no circumstances, as I said, am I trying to do anything that would limit or impede anybody from coming and speaking to this school board to share their issues or concerns. But I am very much interested in having information to respond accordingly and give this board, give whoever the chair may be, as well as myself and staff, every opportunity to be informed and have those conversations. So there's nothing that I would do, whether it's additional information or the checking of a box or completing a form, that would keep a member of the public to not respond. So
Okay, but what we did not provide you with was consensus to
Correct.
change the form.
correct, you provided me with feedback, and then I will take that feedback and I will make any shifts or modifications in order to move forward. So I wasn't looking for consensus, I was looking for feedback from the board in terms of what information goes onto the form for the community to respond
So
to.
what information did you gather from today's discussion that you would add or remove from the form?
Having a topic is something that I will add. Having, whether you are a parent, whether you're not a parent, whether you're a community member, is something that I can add. Once again, it's only information. Address is kind of irrelevant, to be honest with you. Having that information there allows me the opportunity to best inform the board, while at the same time not impeding anyone else's ability to speak or feel as if we're trying to keep them from speaking.
Yeah, that sounds like that's your agenda because you didn't get that from the board. The board did not provide you with that feedback. At least you didn't have consensus to do that.
Well, you can go around the room and give me consensus if that's what you want to do.
So we can give consensus. I say no.
I say look at it, review it again with board members. The one thing is, Chair, it does say in state statute, no personal attacks. And many calls that I had and emails from community members giving a warning, then asking someone to leave. And I need to be on top of that. It's hard when you've got 150 in the room to say who's saying something. But the one thing we do need to do, Dr. Moore, is protect people who are here. And I mean citizens who are here, and not have them have fear if they want to come here. So again, with the general recommendation from the chair, one warning for the group, and then we go into individual speaking. I don't want to do that. I know, I'm just giving my opinion right now. I don't want to do that, but we have to make sure that people are safe. Whether they're a parent or the community or not, parent would be nice to know. We always used to have the address. Now I know any citizen from around, I guess, the nation can come and speak. That's fine. But I'll have to look carefully at how people are speaking and do my best there. What was the other one? The room? What is the
No, he's
maximum?
just talking about the form.
I know, but, okay, good. But what is the maximum capacity in this room?
Off the top of my head, I want to say it's 298,
Okay,
but
we
that's
didn't hit that.
as if there was absolutely no furniture in it. So as you add furniture, obviously that count changes.
So in general, any parent, anyone can speak, any citizen can speak. If it's a book challenge, obviously we'll ask that they just give it to you so we can look at it from there. If someone does choose to speak and it's inappropriate, I can stop, a board member can stop, I'll do a board vote to make sure that every board member feels that way and continue to do my best there. Dr. Pasta?
Yeah, I would not recommend changing anything that we're doing with our public comment. I don't think it's going to benefit the community. I wouldn't change the form or add to it. I don't think it's going to really change anything. And I would hazard and warn against allowing less people in the room like we did during COVID. I think that was very poorly received by the community. It made it feel like we didn't want to hear what they had to say. So I would be very careful about reducing the number of people that we're going to let in the room.
Ms. Berenborg?
Yeah, I just want to say that I want to make sure that the attorney is working with the superintendent to look at the changes of the law and how they're affected through citizen input. That's why I asked to look at possibly putting a check mark on there for are you a parent or not. And that's the only reason why I asked for that, is to look at the law and how it's been changed. And if it has been changed to do that, then let's do it. If not, I understand. Everyone has the right to speak about what they want. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I think it's important for the speaker to know who's at the podium speaking. And that's where the law is a little different. Also, I want to address something that was said again. Why did I put the books on the shelves back before? And that's because the law before, the term profanity included the entire book to be looked at it as a whole, not to pull out one little section and read it. And we had to do that before. And yeah, it made me uncomfortable sometimes. Because again, when you read those passages out on a microphone, of course it's going to be uncomfortable for us. But we have to follow the law when we're not above the law. I'm going to be real honest with you. There are people that think that they can be above the law, and we are not above the law. We are going to stay within the law.
Clear as mud.
Yeah, well, I will bring back to the board any recommended changes before actually changing
Okay.
anything. So
That
that takes
wasn't
care of
clear
that.
as mud.
No, I think everybody giving them different opinions.
It is, but
All you need is a yes or a no. You need a yes or a no. That's,
I have the information that I need. I can process that information before making any changes. I'll make any, if there's any recommended changes to the form, I will share with the board.
Thank you. All righty.
All right, let's
Oslo Middle School Chamber Orchestra trip. Good stuff here.
Through the chair, yeah, Mr. Ballinger, who's the director for course at Oslo Middle School and worked at Storm Grove, has run this program for several years. Quite confident that he's going to do a great job again. The kids have an opportunity to go to Colorado March 26th, return on the 31st. There are 45 students with 15 chaperones. And they will also get an opportunity to visit other, little sectors of the trip, making it a complete learning environment for them at the time that they're going to be out. But again, quite a few parents behind this and very supportive. That's all that I have.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. I've heard them play. They're wonderful. How many students are going? Do you know, Mr. Seymour? And
45.
45. I'm sorry, I didn't
Yes,
see
ma'am.
that. Okay. Board members, any comments?
I hope they have a very educational, fun, and safe trip. Sounds like a great opportunity.
Sure does. All right, thank you. Ms. Berenborg, anything there?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I'm glad that they're going to need to go.
Yeah, it's cool. Review of agreement form for contracted services, HVAC controls. Mr. Bass?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Through the chair, we have a contract bringing to you for HVAC control systems with Johnson Controls. It'll be for Glendale, Pelican Island, Sebastian Elementary. It's the installation of the JCI Meta system, which basically is HVAC controls, the central system brain of it. The total for all three schools is $595,000. We have an owner contingency built in there of $60,000.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Any questions, board members? Mr. Bass, how often do we have to deal with HVAC as far as replacement, repair? How often does that come around?
So it is constant.
Okay.
It's a constant battle, and some of the things right now that we're facing is supply chain issues. Just got an email a few minutes ago that there was a part that we ordered for an air conditioner at Glendale on one of the portables, and it's on back order until October 10th. I mean, you just can't find the parts there. I've talked with Mr. Michael and Mr. Lane about some of their struggles. We're going to sit down and go through a very comprehensive prioritization of our HVAC systems. We've got to look at, taking some bold steps here in the next, 3 to 7 years on getting some of those replaced, because some of them are at their life expectancy.
All right, thank you, sir. All righty. Review of agreement forms for contracted services, Mr. Bass.
So the next item is roof replacement for Dodgertown, Glendale, and Treasure Coast Elementary. It'll be with Garland Roofing off their bid, looking at $3.9 million for the entire scope of work. $2.6 million of that is for Glendale because we were doing the entire roof there at that Gorman Fletcher design.
How long are school roofs good? I mean, I know with the house roofs, how long do they, before we replace them on our schools?
Ma'am, what was that?
How long is the roof last now, the new roofs? What are they doing?
Oh, depending on what type of system it is, if it's a bitumen flat roof, you know, we can get 25 years out of it,
Okay.
and that's with the annual maintenance, which is what the Gorman Fletcher is, of the ceiling of it. You know, the newer structures with the aluminum galvalume roofs, those are, you know, great life expectancy on those 30
Okay.
plus, maybe 40 years.
Thank you, sir. Adam, overview?
Okay, this is something that we were going to bring at the last workshop. Ms. Burney was sick, and so we scheduled it for this one. And unfortunately, you're stuck with me doing the presentation because she is actually doing the drills right now for Project Adam. So, and Ms. Barenborg, are you there too?
I am.
Okay. So I got to give Ms. Barenborg a little credit here because she brought this to us how does this thing work? Several months ago, and I got with Ms. Burney and we realized that, you know, we needed to put some steps and processes in place to ensure that our AED programs were working. We had AEDs in our schools, but we did not have the comprehensive teamwork that we've got now as far as being able to respond and assist when needed. So, and our little clicker isn't working. So anyway, I'll just go ahead just in the sake for time. So Project Adam started in 1999. It started due to a 17-year-old high school basketball player died while playing basketball, Adam Lemuel. And so with that, you had the inception of Project Adam, which their focus is, you know, advocating for AEDs in school, ensures equipment is maintained and staff are trained. So Ms. Burney, along with our site administrators, have gone through at each site and assembled a team of 7 to 10 staff members. And those staff members will, you know, the site coordinator for the nurse, the athletic director, trainers, physical ed teachers, administrators, and other willing staff to come and go through the training. There we go. And the responsibility of the team is to make sure that we have CPR and the AEDs are updated and working. They attend training for the team training, participate in at least 2 cardiac emergency response drills annually, which is what Ms. Burney is doing right now today. And they commit to regular meetings to improve response and communication. So the drills, what Ms. Burney does is they will indicate the call for an AED. The individuals who are on that team will respond. They all have sequential responsibilities. And if someone is not there, someone else steps in for that responsibility to perform the necessary task. They are doing that now. We put that in place. I guess she had it in place last year, but with the change of personnel each year, you've got to go through it all again. So that is what we're doing right now. Then, and here's a little timeline here of what all they have done and how they've done it. You can see that they got the first aid status done in I guess, let's just say May of 22. Each campus had the 2 mock drills in 22-23. Health Services certified another 30 employees in the CPR AED. They're doing the projects right now, the drills right now. This is something that it's always, as long as I can remember, not always, but for several years, been a responsibility and a requirement to have AEDs in schools. Additionally, athletic teams take them with them when they're out either practicing or participating in a competition. And, I can think back years ago was, who knows how to work this thing? Or are the pads, everything charged up and up to date and ready? I feel really comfortable with the fact that now we've put this in place. There is a guidance for the training, and we have staff who are qualified and trained to use this. We can only pray that we don't have to use it, but if we do, I feel comfortable with the response that we'll have from our staff. So, and Ms. Barenborg, thank you for bringing this to our attention here several months ago.
Ms. Barenborg, any comments?
No, I just appreciate you doing this. I know people have paid to put these into our schools, but my concern was that there weren't active drills. And I know that, when I was a principal, we had to do all these active drills with it, and I was really surprised that it.
Thank you. Board members? Good, Dr.
And just one more thing, I would just like to recognize I believe it's the Mel Fisher Foundation. I don't know if that's quite the name they go by, but they have donated funds to help make sure that we have materials and machines in place. And also, upon their urging, we started last year, I believe, with the CPR training for fifth graders at Treasure Coast Elementary, and we've expanded that to a couple more schools for this year.
Great.
So thank you for them and their support.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. I remember all our coaches and administrative team certified in CPR and the AEDs, but I like that we're going out to more people on campus. Crucial. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Basura, the professional.
I have a comment.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Zara, I didn't see you.
Maybe it's time that we, Dr. Posca wasn't here. I don't know if he was tracking at the time. A few years ago, I recommended that we make mandatory or have mandatory heart monitoring specifically for our sports teams. There was a nonprofit called Who We Play For that has been very active in this movement and really all about children just having sudden cardiac arrest. And what they do is they partner with districts, and they come in and they actually, for I think it's $20 or $25, will provide the heart, I don't know, was it an EKG? I forget exactly what it was. But they'll do the heart monitor for the kids. And at the time I presented it to the board, this is with the previous board, if I recall correctly, and there was some pushback actually. And they didn't want to make it mandatory. Actually, I think it was Mrs. Barenborg who said she didn't want to make it mandatory. But I still, maybe this is a good opportunity for us coming out of post-COVID. We have people who literally are having sudden cardiac arrest, children, all over the place, which is insane. I have my own theories around that, but I think it might be a good opportunity for us to revisit that and see where we stand, and maybe maybe this time around we can adopt that to be mandatory.
I know I've seen it done in Vero Beach High School in Sebastian. I know there's an extra charge, and we were looking at some donations for that. But Mr. Bass, you might know a little bit more about that.
Yes, ma'am. Since that discussion, and we were doing it before, but since that discussion occurred a year and a half ago or so, we do have Who We Play For. It comes into all of our sports physicals, and they offer that service to our kids. I don't know that am aware of a kid who wanted that done and may not have had the funding and didn't get it done. Because Who We Play For also has a funding source that they can pay for that, along with, we have district funds also through Mr. Seymour and them for that. But while we're on this subject, I'd spoken to each of you individually, and we received a grant working with the health department. So we are going to offer that screening to all sixth graders coming up this year, and it'd be an opt-out if the parents don't want it, but we can have sixth graders screened. It's a state grant, and we're going to move forward with that.
Why sixth graders?
That's what the grant called for. That's what the state program is.
So we're doing,
Study.
you're doing so help me understand this. So it is a pilot program, a mandated pilot program for all sixth graders where we cover the costs through this grant to do heart monitoring?
It's not mandated.
Oh,
No, it was out there. We felt like this would be a good thing to bring that awareness to parents. They can opt out of it, but the grant covers the cost of it.
why, and tell me again, why just sixth graders?
That was
Just
what the
pick that.
parameters of the grant was. And I don't know, Dr. Posca. Well,
Yeah, I think
that could be it. And I don't know, I always a little nervous talking medical stuff with the medical doctor on the board. But I don't know if sixth graders are about the time that it picks up. I know there was some conversation that was a,
So, yeah, I remember we spoke about this recently, and first, I'm definitely in favor of participating in it. I think it's a great idea. I think in general around the country, we need to bolster our screening processes for these kids going into sports, because something clearly has changed with the number of people experiencing sudden cardiac death in the last few years. As to why they chose sixth graders, there's probably a few reasons. That is around the time where due to basic physiologic changes, if they do have some underlying arrhythmia, they may be more likely to experience it. And I also think it was probably, they're doing a study, basically. That's what they're doing. So they're doing a study, and for whatever reason, that was the age population that they felt they were going to capture the right samples for, rather than going at the very end of high school and looking at that group. So, if we pick these kids up earlier on in their sports careers before they're playing as many intense sports, the hope is that we can identify things sooner and prevent these kids from dying.
Thank you.
thank you, Dr. Posca. Good answer. Thank you, sir.
Any other comments?
And
Exactly that's what I was going to say.
just one, they weren't just doing EKGs, right? They were also doing
Echocardiogram.
echocardiogram. So that's huge. I mean, that right there, that alone is huge. Hopefully, there's also blood work in it as well. But the echo is really critical to this. So there really is no screening across the country where we routinely do echoes of kids for sports. So if we start finding things, this is probably going to change the way we look at health screening.
And it is who we play for is who we're partnering with on this also.
Yeah, they've been really, I mean, you should reach out to them. They have been extremely on the front lines with this in terms of making it legislation, if anything, to require this to be mandated, for all students. I would wholeheartedly support it. It'll only help, it doesn't hurt.
It's a great family. Okay, any other comments on that? Welcome, Mr. Barefoot. How are you?
Ms. Barenboer, I
And
think has
Ms.
a comment.
Berenberg, so you both. Okay. Mr. Barefoot just came on. Thank you.
His comment.
Oh, Ms. Berenberg, you have a comment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I just want to make the kind of a point that was said about I was against something that was mandatory about health for children. Yeah, I was without a parent's permission because, we have parental rights law that says a parent has to make the decision when it comes to anything with health related for their child in school. So I don't want to make something mandatory without a parent's permission.
All righty, thank you.
That wasn't the case. It had
That's
nothing
okay.
to do
We
with
can
the
we can
parents'
move
Bill
on
of
to our
Rights.
next point. All right. I think it's Ms. Basura, and we're starting with the professional learning catalog.
Yes, through the chair. Good afternoon, board members. I have several items. I briefed you during the individual board briefings on many different components that we'll be reviewing today. I also do have a presentation at the end of the section. The first item is the professional learning catalog. The State Board of Education requires school districts to submit a board-approved professional learning catalog annually by October 1st. So each district maintains this professional learning catalog, and in it contains in-service education training options for districts and employees, or district employees, pardon me. All professional learning activities are related to the in-service components. So in the catalog, you'll see it contains a DOE component number, a description, standards and focus areas, and learner outcomes. It also details in our district the leadership academies, which for us is the level 2 principal certification, and endorsement programs. And again, for our district, it's the reading and the ESOL endorsements offered by our district. The changes to this year's catalog are really specific to changing the language from professional development catalog to professional learning catalog so that we are in line with the state language. Any questions on that? Okay.
Any questions, board members? I'm sorry. Okay.
My next two items are both dual enrollment agreement amendments. The first is Embry-Riddle. It is, the agreement was made with a progressive fee structure where Embry-Riddle covered the cost of the adjunct professor for the first 3 years, and then we begin to cost share the salary of that adjunct professor. We currently do have the option of hiring our own teacher or teachers and then get them certified to teach the courses through Embry-Riddle, or continue moving forward with the cost sharing with Embry-Riddle. The amendment is an additional, it's $21,000 over last year's agreement, and that is $15,000 in salary, the cost sharing salary for the adjunct, and then the fringe associated with that. So that is lower than the cost of us hiring a teacher to teach these very specified courses, dual enrollment courses. The next,
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Board members, any comments or questions? How many are enrolled in the Embry-Riddle, do you know?
in Embry-Riddle, we currently have 52 students enrolled in the Embry-Riddle program.
And just to be, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to be clear, this is an increase, right?
Yes,
So this is that we are increasing what we are what our portion of the payment is.
correct.
And one of the questions that I think, when I asked the question last week, I don't know if I got the follow-up. Well, rather, I didn't get a follow-up. Are we going to renegotiate that?
So
that was the question.
we do have the option of hiring our own teacher or moving forward with their cost structure. Their cost structure is through a grant that they use. So they are unwilling to change that cost structure, but we do have the option to hire our teacher to do it in-house. However, that would cost us more money than the current fee structure that is scheduled.
Okay, that was going to be my next question is,
Yes,
is it cost-effective for us to keep it the way that it is or
Yes.
or pay for it out of our pocket?
it's
It's cost.
much more cost-effective to do it this way.
But who does the evaluation of the teacher then? They do or?
It's an adjunct professor, just like, if they were to travel to a college and take the course, not us.
So an adjunct professor comes to our school campus and teaches that course at, I understand. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, our next one.
Okay, the next one is the Indian River State College dual enrollment agreement. This was originally on the board agenda for approval back in July, and they had asked to pull it and bring it back. We went through some conversations with them. They made some changes to dates, eligibility and access requirements. Students who have graduated or met graduation obviously are no longer eligible for dual enrollment. Some changes to the career pathways eligibility, and all of the changes that have been made are actually opening up more opportunity for our students. In the previous dual enrollment agreement, they had some restrictive language about required or must. Now that language has changed to recommendations versus it's a requirement. And they also have addressed the new legislation that allows 6th through 12th graders to enroll in dual enrollment. Any questions about that one?
How many, I'm not talking about where our students go to the Mueller Center or IRSC. Do you know how many dual enrollment classes we have at each of our high schools?
I believe we are eligible to have 4 sections or 4 courses and multiple sections of those courses, so I don't have the exact answer for that. But we have currently 325 students taking dual enrollment, and they are taking 794 dual enrollment courses for this semester. I do not have next semester's numbers as of right.
So 325 students, and they're taking 794 classes.
Yes, and that's up 48 students from last year and up 77 courses from last year.
Thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Berenborg or Mr. Barefoot? Anyone else?
I do.
Nothing from me, thanks.
Okay. Ms. Rosario?
One of the questions, just so board members are on the same, understand some of the context around some of the things that we talked about, I have been obviously publicly sharing the importance of dual enrollment, especially when you have children who just would like something different other than the traditional school setting. We only have 2 options, not counting charter high school within our county, so offering another option for a student would only benefit the student. If we're gonna do what is best by kids, why not? Why not offer dual enrollment? So I'm extremely happy with this. I'm happy that we have adjusted the language to include other grades, so we're not limiting ourselves to just 11th and 12th graders. So obviously, the law says that if you are a 6th grader, you are eligible for dual enrollment. My opinion, not too many 6th graders can handle college-level work. But if you can pass the PERT test, why not? I mean, it's certainly up to you. So I appreciate this. Thank you so much for listening to my concerns and actually coming back with some good news for kids. And I just hope that we can do more. I really do. I hope that we can get the word out to teachers who are interested. So if a teacher is interested in getting certified, right now they're watching this, they're interested in becoming whatever the certification is to teach dual enrollment classes, either at the college campus or on our campus to our students, what should they do?
Their first step would be they can obviously connect with me or the folks in my department, and we can help steer that. But IRSC actually has to do the credentialing of those folks to make sure that they are credentialed to be able to teach. So really, all of the work happens through IRSC, but they've been very responsive in this partnership and have done some of that work on our behalf already.
So do they call you or do they call IRSC?
They can call me and we can connect, just because it's also helpful to know how many courses we could potentially be offering students on our high school campuses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Ms. Basura?
So the next item is the 2023-24 K through 12 Uniform Assessment Calendar. This is also a Florida statute and a DOE requirement where districts submit a board-approved uniform assessment calendar each year. In this, the DOE calendar template is the one that we use. We enter our information into that template and submit it to the Department of Education. The things that are in that template are the type of assessment, the date and date ranges of assessments, the time allocated for those assessments, grade levels, types and purposes of the assessment, a glossary of terms, the average time allocated, and then a point to note is that the real reason behind this is to make sure that districts do not go over a 5% threshold for testing. You know, there was definitely a lot of conversation about our students were being over-tested across the state of Florida. So there is a 5% threshold. Our district comes in at 3.55% for one grade level, and that's 7th grade, and that's our highest percentage. Everything else is well below that threshold. So that's the purpose for the uniform assessment calendar that is sent to the Department of Education.
Any questions from anyone? Thank you. Next.
Okay, I think my next item, I'm going out of order just because I have some notes here. So I think my next item is the School Advisory Council composition reports. You have packets of composition reports for review. According to Florida statute and Board Policy 2125, each school must establish a School Advisory Council committee. Each SAC committee, as we refer to them, must be composed of a principal, a balanced number of teachers, support employees, parents, and business partners who are representative of the school community. High schools must have a student representation. Middle schools may, and elementary schools do not. So you have for review the current composition report for our school, each school's SAC committee, keeping in mind that these committees may be fluid. 2 months from now, somebody may say they can no longer maintain the commitment to the committee, and somebody else wants to join. So this is a frozen kind of point in time of that compliance report, or composition report, I'm sorry. Okay?
I haven't been to one of those yet. I mean, as far as being fluid and so forth. In other words, they're taking a look at it, look at the goals like we do with our strategic plan, change them if we need to. Is that what you mean by fluid, Ms. Basura?
No, what I mean is, let's just say a new business opens up in a neighborhood school area, and they want to partner with the school.
Okay.
And one of the ways they want to partner with the school is through their SAC committee. Maybe that's in 3 months from now, they can begin to start to attend those meetings and ask to become formally part of that committee. And I don't believe any school would ever
No. Say, "Come on."
discourage that, correct? So that's what I mean when I say fluid.
Okay, thank you. Okay, school improvement plan, that was before the school advisory.
Yes, let me make sure I get my ducks in a row here.
All righty.
Because this is a presentation.
Okay.
And I think there'll be, thank you. Okay, so our district, we have a school improvement planning process in our district that is a system of continuous improvement. For us, the process is living and breathing. It drives the work at schools. It's in support of schools, drives the work of the district who are in support of schools. It's a process that we created under the direction of Dr. Moore when he first came here that guides the work to improve the schools using these frequent and fluid phases to analyze data, make a plan, reflect on the progress, and adapt and modify, and then ultimately repeat. And I think we lost my,
We had the wrong one up. That's coming.
okay. There we go. Nothing like everybody watching. So while that's coming online, we do these mini cycles 4 times throughout the school year to allow for adjustments rather than waiting till the end of the year to determine if the plan is working. I know several of you have been in education and are familiar with the Department of Education's school improvement planning process, where you start the year, you create these year-long goals, and then you wait till the end of the year to determine if you met them. We do it where we do that same cycle, but we do mini cycles throughout the year. Are we ready? Okay, let me go back to. Okay, so the phases of implementation are what I described when I said we do 4 mini cycles. In the beginning, we do a phase 1 where we analyze, we reflect, we identify, and that's usually at the very beginning of the year because you're reflecting on the previous year's data. You're making some assessments based on the information from the prior year's testing, the prior year observational data, and then we go into phase 2, which is what we consider a full implementation, and that phase 2 is where we use that information from the first phase to drive the second phase. Obviously, phase 3 is that mid-year reflection that occurs around January, and then that is really meant to take us into the end of the year at that point. And phase 4 is where, usually in June, we come together as school leadership teams and we review the entire year in review. So the phases of implementation, this gives you an idea of the timeline that our schools work under through this. The implementation of SIP phase 1 really occurs August 1st through October 31st. They began developing this work back in July at our Engage, our district's leadership team professional development. We did a review of that and provided feedback. Not only did we do the review through the district lens, but they did peer reviews of their school improvement plans. Our school leadership teams updated any of their phase 1 with that feedback. All of the final phase 1s were due August 1st in the Canvas Leadership Hub. And we have gone through, we are presenting to you today after they have taken their school improvement plans to their SAC advisory committees, that same committee that I just shared about, the SAC composition reports. And it will come back to you at the September 25th board meeting for review. Just to give you a sense of what happens then as we go into phase 2, we do what we call impact walks and datacom. Those impact walks are opportunities for us to go visually and observationally see if what we say we're doing is happening and is it successful. That's what the impact walk process is. And then we come together collectively, all principals and admin teams, along with the district, and we do a massive analysis of the data, both observational and quantitatively. Okay? And I think for some reason the focus areas is not showing up. I noticed that myself, but I can just review quickly for you the focus areas. We do focus on 3 key areas. Area 1 is around, obviously, academics. Area 2, culture and climate. And Area 3, family and community engagement. The community and family engagement really across the district this year is focusing on communication. We are really trying to help our schools be stronger communicators with our parents and families. And then the culture and climate focus areas for elementary will focus on their school theme. In middle school, we have started the teaming approach, and so they are doing a lot of work around the culture and climate of teaming. And finally, at high school, we know we are still, attendance is still something that we very much have to continue to keep our eye on. So the high schools will be focusing on attendance for their culture and climate area. So our school leaders engage in a process of reviewing the data. They develop a theory of action, and then they create an action plan with very specific action steps and folks who are responsible for those steps. This cycle that you see, I've already said it earlier, really is repeated 4 times throughout the year. So we are not waiting to the end of the year to review, to make adjustments if necessary. I believe you actually already have copies of all school board or school improvement plans. What you'll be approving. You also have a copy of the template so that you can see the process in its entirety. But you will see these come before you at the September 25th board meeting. Clicker's not working again. Okay. Any questions about that?
Couple things. With our new accreditation system in Cognia, what are they saying about our school improvement plans? I mean, that used to be really big with accreditation and SACs. Just in general, are we online with them? And I know all of our schools are accredited, so.
Through the chair, we've set a very hard bar for them to follow. We are the one district in the state of Florida that has designed a process that is aligned to our very specific needs and our very specific focus areas. So it is a practice that's being highlighted really not only across the state, but ultimately across the nation in terms of how we are very specific in using data to drive that instruction.
And Dr. Moore, Ms. Basura, when you go on your impact walks, tell me one thing that's really great and what can we work on? Either one of you.
We have seen the instructional quality improve over the last 3 years like I've not seen in any years prior. One of the things I think we can improve, and we're doing that this year, is we've scheduled those impact walks. We have identified times throughout the year where they're scheduled. And what we've done in the past, if we've scheduled not just the day, the school, the classrooms, and sometimes when there is that much scheduling that happens, you don't always know if you're getting an accurate picture of the reality, a normal day in the life. So this year we have a schedule, but everyone in the school is open for an impact walk, so that we can really, test our system to see, are we really seeing what we think we're seeing?
Dr. Moore?
So to me, it's ownership. And I think the work that we've done over the last 3 years is to create a system that really accelerates the school site's ability to evaluate what's taking place in a classroom, and then to define what are the next steps for the adults to take to improve the quality of that instruction. Keyword being adults. And when I say ownership, it cannot be dependent on Ms. Basura or team or myself in team. That level of thinking has to take place each and every single day when an administrator walks into a classroom, during a common planning, where we have the true design in place to empower those who are instructing children at school sites to evaluate the practice each and every single day, to evaluate what do I need to do differently, where do I need to reteach to accelerate student outcomes. So it's really building ownership. And if you were to walk our elementary schools, you're going to see high levels of ownership this specific year. In our secondary schools, we've taken drastic steps in terms of alignment of instruction, but really digging into this specific year, how are we making sure we're teaching the standards? How are we just not exposing students to the standard, but ensuring that each and every single student in the classroom understands the path that they're going to take to master that standard based on where he or she is on that day, in that moment of time, academically. So when you look at our data, it's abundantly clear. We have made outstanding improvements in instruction, in the depth and the level of thinking in our elementary schools, and we have made significant improvements content-specific in our secondary schools, and I think what you're going to see at the end of this year is continued growth, 2-3 percentage points improvement in elementary school, and then drastic improvement in our secondary schools, very similar to what you saw last year in terms of drastic improvement in our elementary schools and kind of baselining in our secondary schools. We're going to see a drastic improvement in our secondary schools this year.
Thank you. And that all aligns then when you meet with the principals in Datacom, where you are and where you need to go.
Datacom is a accountability conversation across the entire system, and we have such a high expectation on our principals. Rest assured, I have that same expectation for everybody else. So it affords the principals the opportunity to say, hey, this is where I'm currently at.
Right.
This is the plans that I have in place. And Mr. Superintendent, this is what I need from you if I'm going to be able to make sure that this is happening. It could be an open language arts position. I've been going through the red tape of a big system trying to get this person. I have the ability to say there will be a teacher in that classroom tomorrow. So that just increases accountability. Accountability just isn't on teachers and principals. It's on everyone, including
Absolutely.
myself. So we all collectively hold ourselves accountable for what are we doing to support that principal to ensure we have the improvement our community deserves to have for our school system.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Becerra.
Thank you.
Next is the,
Can I speak?
oh, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
So thank you for presenting this. One of the things that I have found over the years with the school improvement plan is that it didn't align with our strategic plan. And so if we want to reach the targets that are in the strategic plan and the goals that are in there, that schools should kind of do that work alongside of, not alongside, they need to do the work that is required of them to do. I'm trying to kind of put this in, I guess, friendly terms. But what I have found is that in the past, they weren't doing that. So they were creating these school improvement plans kind of in silos. And they really were not aligned with the strategic plan. So in the last couple of years, this move towards kind of aligning it with the strategic plan as best as possible. And I say as best as possible because every school's improvement is different from the next. They have different dynamics, different students, different needs, and so I get that. But at the same time, making sure that the plan actually aligns with the strategic plan is important for me, so that there is consistency throughout the district, and so we're all kind of eventually speaking the same language, we're all on the same page. How that looks would be different, but the goal itself would be whatever the goal is written in the strategic plan. So I appreciate some of the changes that have been done. Some of the other things that, and I don't see the actual school improvement plans, it's not
Okay.
here.
I'll find out. I think they were uploaded, but maybe not.
Well, they're not on the, as an attachment, I just see the template.
Oh, okay. Yes, I did want you to have a sense of the template as schools were finalizing theirs, but they were final last week, so I thought they were uploaded by now. Okay.
No, when will we get to see that?
Yeah, they're ready. We can, as soon as I leave here.
Okay. Because that's what I was hoping that we'd be able to see, so that
Yes.
we could provide feedback on that,
Okay.
and that's not here. So then the other thing, what's the other, was the language and the data. So what I have found is that some principals were extremely detailed with their data, and then some were not. Some were just very, we'll get to it, or, something very generic where data wasn't a strong suit within an area within the school improvement plan. So has that, because I don't see it here, I can't provide feedback on it. Has that changed? Has the direction been, with regard to data, kind of use your current data and add it in the school improvement plan? I mean, is the language going to be varied from principal to principal, or are we going to see some of the same kind of language throughout?
So as you said, every school has unique needs, as long as we are all speaking the same language and moving in the same direction. We have gone through several layers of feedback with our principals, where you saw that they were due August 1st. We are just finishing up probably round 4 of feedback, where we would get feedback, we would get the plans, we would provide feedback, and they would go back and revisit the ways they are addressing exactly that. Not only the feedback, but also the action steps. So yes, it should be much more specific and much more consistent across the district, but there will be situations where every school is the individual school and has slightly different needs from their neighbor schools. So it won't be robotic and exact, but it should be similar.
And just to build upon that, just to highlight the work, we do not want principals to evaluate or to interpret their own data. The data is what the data is. And we provide that information, and we talk through the process as to what barriers or obstacles are in the way that impede the ability for the school to move forward. So if a principal is trying to write into a school improvement plan, which is on the old template, to rationalize an outcome versus truly understanding what impeded the ability to improve the outcome, are two different things. So all of our tools that we provide to our principals streamlines the ability to really dig into the data and connect the data to the barrier or obstacle that they need to address. So we don't spend a lot of time trying to justify the outcome. We spend a lot of time trying to understand why we have the outcome in place and what actions we need to take that have the highest influence on improving the overall data.
So you're giving the data to them, and you're not allowing the principals the autonomy to seek out the data on their own?
They don't create the data themselves. We give them the tools to think through the data versus let me spend hours creating my own data. The data is provided to them on a template that allows them to problem solve and think through what the data is versus saying, tell me what your data is. Very different.
Yeah, but they have the ability, right? I mean, to a certain extent. I mean, I get that we have platforms, we have Power BI, but, when principals are in that position, they should have the autonomy to be able to take the data and I guess, dissect it any way that they need to. So if they're looking for information on a particular subset of students, they could be able to do that on their own, correct?
That is problem solving, yes. That is
So
exactly what they do
that's-
versus
okay.
trying to.
Yeah.
It is deepening their understanding as to what's happening in a classroom and using data to inform instruction versus justifying an outcome. So it's forward thinking in terms of where we need to go versus trying to rationalize an outcome.
Yeah,
So
I think we're on the same page there. I just don't want us to I understand that we need to provide an avenue for the way they receive the data. But I still think that principals are in that position to be the instructional leaders. And so what works well for one will not work the same way for somebody else. But I think you're right. We are on the same page in that the data should drive instruction. I was just wondering how that would look in terms of the school improvement plan. Like actually articulating that in a school improvement plan is quite different than living it out on a day-to-day basis.
Any other comments? Thank you. All right, Ms. Baser, I think you have
I do have
K
one
through
more.
12 social studies. Yeah, the last one.
And this is a presentation as well, so here we go. So my last presentation is the K through 12 social studies instructional materials adoption. This presentation will serve as an update for the board along with the next steps in the process. Throughout this presentation, I'll just review the timeline and the process. We'll review the rank order list of recommendations made by the committee and the next steps. The timeline and the process really they started back in April. As board members know, we talked about starting our social studies adoption after the state identified their list of approved materials, rather than trying to guess which materials would make the list and spend a tremendous amount of time going through the process. So we waited and started in the spring, and that really began between around April 6th through the 16th is when the committee was formed. You'll see we then finalized, the initial meetings began in April and finalized on August 17th with the final committee meeting and review. August 18th through September 6th is when the 20-day calendar public review of recommended materials occurred. And this is a continuation of that timeline. Obviously, it goes into more details in the middle there. The August 15th, 16th, and 17th committee meetings occurred with the committee making their final recommendations of the rank ordered list. We started with, on August 15th, the K through 5 committee, went to August 16th, the 6 through 8 committee, and the 17th, the 9 through 12 committee. Many of you asked questions about why we did it this way, and the purpose for doing it this way is that we had folks who wanted to serve K through 12, so the only way for them to really be part of this process and in the conversation is to have 3 separate meetings so that they could attend each of those. Here we are today with the presentation to the school board. We will administer a notice of public hearing September 18th. The public hearing will be at the board meeting September 25th. That public hearing is for comments. The 20-day calendar review of materials has been out there, so any public or resident, parents or community members who want to come and provide comments on the materials that have been out there for review have the option to come and do that at the public hearing. That's a really important opportunity for the board members to hear feedback from the community before the October 24th board meeting, where you will make a final vote. Once that October 24th board meeting occurs, Those materials then sit for 30 days in case any community member wants to petition them. And then we go on from there. The rank ordered list, this goes elementary through middle. We started with Gallopade had the highest rating, McGraw-Hill the second highest, TCI the third, Analytic Orange fourth, and Nystrom the fifth, received the fifth highest rating. Obviously, board members, you can see through middle school, National Geographic was the middle school highest ranked curriculum across the board. And I'll let you take a look at the others. We have a rank ordered list for our high school courses as well. McGraw-Hill received the highest ranked committee feedback for U.S. history, economics, and U.S. government. For world history, Nat Geo received the highest rating along with Savvis. They were tied. And high school psychology, there was only one book on the state's approved list for us to review, so that is the only book that our committee reviewed. And this is saying the same thing that you just saw, it's just breaking it down where you can see the average score for each of those. And I'll stop at any point if you'd like, but that is the same information just in graph form. So the next steps, obviously I mentioned that the 20-day calendar review has occurred. We are here with the presentation currently. The notice of public hearing occurs. The business meeting where that public hearing will be held will be September 25th. October 23rd is when the school board will vote on materials. And October 24th through November 23rd is where our community and parents have the right to petition any materials should they choose to. And that review. And before we close with that, I just want to thank all the members who served on the Instructional Materials Adoption Committee. I don't know if folks understand how much work goes into that. It's a very lengthy process. There are, statutes and timelines that draw this out for several months. And we are just very fortunate that we have a large number of folks who are really committed to this. So I just publicly want to thank all of them for participating.
Thank you. Board member comments? Ms. Rosario?
Yeah, for any parent who is not a part of the committee and they want to take a look at, the materials, how can they have access? Because I know you mentioned one of the screens there, one of the slides there, but it doesn't have information on how they actually access the books. And I know you're going to say something online. If you can also add to, because I don't see any books outside in the lobby as well.
Our review this time was purely digital, and we chose to do it that way because the state was approving materials at the same time committees were being formed. So to give all the publishers who were in that review and approval process the most opportunity to be reviewed, we went with a company called EdCredible, and the nature of the digital platform allowed the publisher to upload their content for our folks to review immediately once the state gave their approval. So the state's approval was ongoing. It wasn't like they finished one day and there was the list. It was ongoing throughout the summer, actually. So we did choose to go with EdCredible. We followed several other districts in the state to do that process. And that also allowed our community members and our teachers and staff who were on the committee to review a broad swath of books and not have to actually take the physical books with them. So everything was done digitally this time around. We've had computers out in the lobby that have been open to review the K-5 curriculum, the 6-8 curriculum, and the 9-12 curriculum. We've sent out connected messages. Banners have been on our website indicating how to access this information.
Okay, so right now, how does somebody access the information?
There are links. They can use these links to access.
Where are the links?
They were sent, they're on our website.
On our website?
They were on our website. There was also information pushed out through a ConnectEd message.
I know,
about-
but some citizens are
Yeah.
not parents. They
Got
don't
it.
get the phone calls.
Yes.
So how does this?
On our
How
website.
does the community on our website? So we're on our website, so someone who's listening.
I'll ask our webmaster to refresh that and have that back front and center so that.
Are
it-
there, okay, and what's happened in the past is there was like, we said, oh, it's on our website, and then there was a password or an email, or, you needed a certain code. Is that all eliminated so that it's,
It should be open because it was for public review.
right, that's what
Yes.
I'm hoping. Well, it was supposed to be that way a couple of years ago too, and it wasn't. There was, like, you had to jump through hoops to actually look at the material, so. All right, so we'll get that up and running and make
It's still
sure.
there.
It's still there.
Still
Okay.
there?
It's in the gallery, yes, so when you click on it, you can review all of the.
So where is it? Is it in instructional materials? Is it
It's
on?
definitely
So
there,
on the
but it's in
landing
gallery
page in the
as well.
gallery, indianriverschools.org, if you click on that, it'll take you right to the instructional materials page where it says Public Review of K through 12 Social Studies Instructional Materials for Adoption, and you can go through the course information, the curriculum available for grades 6 through 12.
Okay. Good. So just something
It's there.
that for the public to be able to, I received some of those phone calls, so I'm glad that we did it. I'm glad that we've been reaching out to our parents, but then we have other people who also have the right to take a look at those as well. So thank you for that. The other thing that I was going to ask, now I know that these are the ones that are recommended. What were some of the, were there any curriculum that you were looking at that did not end up on this list?
No, we reviewed everything that was on the state's final list up until the committee was making their recommendations. And everything that is on there is what made that state's final list.
Okay.
We reviewed everything.
Okay. And the meetings, were the meetings held out in the sunshine?
Yes.
They were held in the sun, were minutes taken for
Yes.
those meetings? And were they publicly recorded?
They are publicly recorded. We have an instructional materials page that has everything, everything around the committee formation, the committee itself, the minutes from the meetings. It's all there.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
Madam
Ms.
Chair-
Berenborg or Mr. Barefoot? I've got a couple things. Doug, do you want to say something? Okay.
No.
Nothing
Again,
from
thank
me,
you to-
thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're good, Mr. Barefoot? Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. I did science 5 years ago. It's a lot of work. Thank you to the people on the committee for their due diligence, and excited that we have all that information. Now, we do our ordering for next year. And I remember when we did it for science, are we looking like class sets? Are we looking digital? What are we looking for ordering?
Every curriculum that is on our list that has been reviewed has a digital and a print version. We would always look to have at least class sets and print version sets along with the digital.
But will everyone get a book, or are we just looking at class sets and then the digital?
Most of the materials are consumables, which means
Okay.
every student gets their own, but not all. So it just depends on each of the publishers. There are some that are class sets in the high school grades along with the digital component.
Okay.
But as I said, many of these they have a renewable workbook that is individual for each student, a print version each year.
Dr. Moore, we're still having our students with laptops, and so no one, if it's digital, will have a barrier.
Absolutely. We are a one-on-one district.
Thank you. Anyone else? All righty.
That exhausts my agenda, and I believe we've already covered of board member items A, Ms. Berenborg, which is now item B.
Ms. Rosario, are we on Ms. Rosario? 'Cause
Yes.
Ms. Berenborg, you're good on citizen input? I think we already covered that. Okay, Ms. Rosario?
Yes, fine.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, we all voted to have training in Robert's Rules of Order. The candidate was vetted, this was before the summer, we broke for summer. As of now, we have yet to select a date. So I think that it's long overdue for us to have something in place for us to get trained in Robert's rules. From what I recall, it was the consensus of the board to have the meetings virtual. So that's not on the table. What's on the table now is just, we got to select a date so we can get trained.
Board members, any comments? Ms. Berenborg or Mr. Barefoot, any comments?
No comment.
No comment.
So maybe we can just have our board secretary set out a number of dates, maybe in October, and we can see who's available on what days and move from there.
Okay, good suggestion. Ms. Morey, did you hear that?
Yes. So the other question is, if we do this virtual, would we all be present and she's virtual? Or would we all be virtual, we could do it from home? That's another scenario. I would prefer that we are all present in case we have any questions. It's just an easier format, but I guess, this isn't a hill that I would die on. I see Ms. Maury's hand over there.
Just because I've been in touch with the center, I believe she was thinking virtual.
Right,
Everybody virtual.
okay.
Yeah,
Everybody, including us.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
And then, so I'll have staff push out the request, and all we would need is replies so we can get it scheduled.
Thank you. Any other comments before we close today? Okay. Thank you, everyone. We will adjourn this workshop today at 2:16.